They buy to solve problems, right? They're not going to say yes for, potential something. They're buying to remove a problem. And so in the interview now, my goal is not to go talk about me. It's not to talk about my skill set or anything like that. It's to build trust, build a relationship, connect on values, and get them to a point where at the end of it, there is trust, right? Where they're like, they see we're one and the same. We connect on value. Like, I like you. I trust you. I see you as me. Like, let's do something together.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Levelin Up podcast with Brigham Blackham. I'm so excited to have Josh Forti here with me today. We are going to have a great conversation talking about the number one issue and the number one problem that entrepreneurs face today. So, Josh, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Hey, thanks so much for having me. This will be fun. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really exciting to meet new people online. And when your paths converge, it's like, man, now we have an opportunity to make some magic and collaborate. So tell me a little bit about your expertise. Why are you so passionate about what you do? Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my name is Josh Forti, like you said, and I grew up, well, all over the place, but when I was age 11 years old, I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, Indiana. So grew up on the farm and got into entrepreneurship in my late teens, early 20s. And long story short, I sucked at it. I sucked at sales. I sucked at making money. I sucked at entrepreneurship and all the things, right? The typical story of starting from the bottom. I did door-to-door sales one summer, business to business, and I made exactly one sale the entire summer. So it was it was rough. It was rough. So when I got into the world of entrepreneurship and, had this burning desire for freedom and to be able to be my own boss and control my own schedule and, essentially just escape the life that I didn't like that I was living at the time. I would say my passion comes from that, the passion of building a life of freedom, building a life where I was in control of my actions, and not just for the sake of like, oh, I wanted to be rich for the sake of being rich, but like so that I could go and grow and do the things that I wanted to do and invest in things that I wanted to invest in. I wasn't trying to be lazy, right? Like I love working, but just like having that control, I felt trapped for a lot of my life. And so, struggled in the entrepreneurship world for a while, certainly had vanity metric success. Many people would say we grew and managed about 7 million followers on social media, all organically. And one thing led to another, from, shutting down businesses to my brother passing away to traveling around the world, my wife being sick to, all the things. But eventually came up with and found the golden mic method, which is hence the golden mic. But essentially the thing that I'm like, the reason I'm excited about it and passionate about it is for most of my career, I asked the question, how could I sell something that benefits me? Right. But I think the golden mic is the first thing where I really thought it through from the different perspective, which is if money follows value and I don't get to determine value, the marketplace gets to determine value.
Sure.
The question shifted to how can I solve a legitimate problem that entrepreneurs actually have, that actually needs solved, not that they need to be convinced that they have the problem, or not that they need to, be convinced to spend money that is not necessary on, but like a legitimate need that could change their life and business. And I think I know that we found and identified that problem. And that's why I'm excited. I feel like we have something that can really make a difference in the lives of people that actually need it, not just something I made up for my own benefit.
No, I love that. And what's cool about really diving into entrepreneurship is finding those problems that people not only want solved, but they need to solve to be able to scale up and to level up. So let's actually identify, what is that problem in your opinion? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, it's interesting when you grow up in a social media world, as I did, right? I just turned 30. And so social media, I kind of grew up in that world. And so when at the peak of my social media success, if you will, or the business there, like I said, we grew and managed about 7 million followers and had a network of probably 100 million that we were distributing ads and stuff across of. So for me, traffic was never an issue. I didn't know how to make any money off of that traffic, right? I didn't know how to sell things, but I did not understand I didn't understand when people are like, I don't have anybody to sell to. And I'm like, what do you mean? But then I sold the business, and then I, stepped out of that and shut down that portion of my life and kind of stepped into the next phase. And I started like actually working with real business owners and entrepreneurs and like working in their business and alongside them and understanding the problems and the skills that were necessary. And bar none, like every single person that I would work with kept coming back to this problem, which there's a million different ways to say it, but essentially it's inability to get in front of your ideal client consistently, right? And every word of that matters. The ideal part, the word ideal,
Yep,
ideal
sure.
client matters, consistently matters. Anybody can get in front of somebody once or twice. But whether it's I'm not making enough money, right? It's like, well, maybe it's the wrong customer, right? Or whether it's, I need to collect data, or I need to get better at sales, or, I just need more revenue, or I need more clients. All of them can be traced back to this core problem. And that's the problem that we solve is that core problem right there. Because like, if you have the ability to get in front of your ideal client consistently to where you can basically push a button or take an action and more ideal leads come in, I think that I can change the life of an entrepreneur, because it's, that's your tie to cash. And obviously we need cash.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you can not only identify the ideal client, but consistently get in front of them, like you said, that is going to be make or break it in your business.
Yeah.
And when you can have the right conversations with people and turn those conversations into an opportunity to solve that problem that they already have, and they're willing, ready, and able to pay for it, you're like,
Yeah.
all right, this is a match made in heaven. That's the idea of this ideal client. So let's talk about some of the functionalities and how you found this method. Talk to
Yeah.
us about your process of development.
Man, good question. So, I don't know about you. I don't know about your listeners, but I did not come from I don't come from money. I don't have any connections or special talents. I'm not overwhelmingly skilled. I certainly wasn't born an athlete, right? So, I mean, I come from loosely the word nothing, right? I come from a place where I was starting from a place where I had zero and I was working my way up, right? And I would look around at all the people that had more success than I did. And vividly, I would remember sitting there going, like, this doesn't make sense. Like, they're not working harder than I am. I'm outworking them. They don't have a better product than I do, right? And it's like, at some point, like, if everyone was having the problem, there had to be, or everyone was thinking that way, but yet some people were making it, some people weren't. I'm like, there's something I'm not seeing, right? Like, there has to be something that I am missing that these people understand that I don't. My problem is that it felt like it was guarded behind a paywall of $50,000 masterminds, right? You know what I'm saying?
Like that, doesn't it? Oh, for sure.
You know what I'm saying though, right? It's like, okay, cool. Like, here are all the secrets, except for the ones we're not going to tell you unless you pay us 50 grand, right? Or 25 grand or whatever the thing was. And so, I'm a big believer in coaches. I'm a product of the coaching industry. I love coaching and mentors. And, but at the time, like, I didn't have any money. And so I was like, all right, so how can I get rich and successful people? If mindset is the answer, right? If getting around these people is the answer, how do I get successful people to talk to me? Or how can I get in front of these people? Because I don't have a Rolodex of billionaires, right? Like, I can just call and be like, hey, can I tell you something? I'm doubting you do. Maybe you do, but most people don't, right? And so I was like, all right, well, they're not going to say yes to me. Maybe they'll say yes to a podcast. Maybe they'll say yes to being interviewed. And so I sat down, and the premise of the podcast when we started it was, hey, I'm going to ask life's biggest questions. I'm going to share the answers with people. And then secretly, I'm like, hey, I want to go and interview these people so I can learn their secrets without having to pay them 50 grand because I'm broke and don't have any money to pay them that, right? And so I did. I started interviewing these people, kind of documenting my journey of that. And one day I was talking to a guy, or I got to interview a guy, very successful, multi 8 figures, the smartest dude I've ever met in my life by far. I mean, like, wealth and money and business, and like worked on Wall Street and has 5 degrees and took companies public and like tens of millions of dollars in real estate. I mean, just like crazy smart. And there's no way this guy ever would have said yes to me unless I had, a podcast. And so he did end up saying yes. He came on the show and we talked for 2 hours. The interview's actually still up. And at the end of the interview, he's talking about money and success and all this stuff. We get done and he goes, that was awesome, right? Like, I really like you. That was a really fun interview. And he goes, I'm interested in actually hiring you for, like, your services. And I'm like, me? Like, are you sure? Like, awesome. You know what I mean? I'm freaking out because I'm like, this guy's way more successful than anyone I've worked with. I've worked with a lot of beginners at this point. And long story short, he goes, hey, can you send me over a proposal? Just kind of break down exactly what happened, like what you do and what that would look like. I'm meeting with my team tomorrow. And I like freak out because I'm like, up until this point, how I know how to sell stuff was like big, long, complicated, like email sequences and funnels and steps and like, pages that have this much information on it and very complex and confusing. And like, it wasn't selling, you know what I mean? Like, you ever build something, it's like you're sending people there, but it's not actually working, but you're like, I'm doing all the things. And I was embarrassed. I was like, I'm not going to send him to that because I know that that's not working. And so I asked him a couple questions, and I vividly remember sitting there going, okay, if I send him to this, it's not going to work. What can I send him? And I thought, well, if this guy knew what I knew about social media. If he saw social media through the lens that I saw social media, not the details, not the things, if he saw it through that way, I bet you he would want to at least take the next step. And so I pulled out a Google Doc and I wrote down what he said his problem was, and I wrote down, some of the information that I knew, and kind of just like was like, here's how I see social media. Here's how I think it would apply to yours. And I did not expect him to say yes, right? I'm, this freaking out internally, but I was like, in the off chance that he does say yes, right? Like I need to charge enough money to where I can like cancel everyone else and only focus on him so that I can get him a result, right? Because I'm like, I don't want to blow it if he happens to say yes. And so, like it's a big opportunity, and I'm used to making $25,000 a year was my last job, right? I was, and so at the time the service was $5,000. And so I wrote down the largest number that I could possibly stomach and fathom at the time, which was $30,000. And I put that there and I sent him over the proposal. And a couple days later, he texts me back and he's like, hey, we're in, this all looks good. I got a couple questions. We got on the phone and, within a week he had wired me $30,000. And
Sweet.
like, you ever have those moments where you're like, I do not know what just happened, but I got to do more of that? Like that was the moment. And like for the first time, I had made more money than I had ever made without a traditional sales call, no funnels, no email sequences, like in one transaction. And it was like, what have I been doing my whole life? Right? Like what? But it was because at that moment, I realized that I had solved for me the biggest problem I had, which was I wasn't getting in front of the right people. I was getting in front of beginners. I was getting in front of people without money. And so by changing my buyer using the podcast, the average result that I got with this service was 5,000. They'd pay me $5,000 and I'd get them between $16,000 and $17,000. That was on average. This guy paid me $30,000. And within 60 days, we had made almost $400,000 for him. It was like, if I can change my buyer, if I can get in front of the ideal client consistently, that was what, like that moment for me where I was like, okay, if I just do more of that, I think most of my problems go away.
You think about the value exchange too. That's a massive difference. And you're getting higher compensation and they're getting a better result.
Yes.
So literally it's a massive win-win.
Yes.
So if you guys can all think of your different ways that you serve your clients, I love the way that you're like, you know what? What's going to make it worth it if I have to cancel all my other clients to make sure he gets that result? That's a great question to ask.
Yeah.
I have this idea of what the method is to find an ideal client, but let's hear your take. What do you do to say this is pinpointing exactly who my ideal client is, so I can find the people that actually want to do business with me, that love my service, that become raving fans rather than just someone that just enjoys it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like we have, it's always interesting whenever I build, we're in the process of revamping our program from like tip to tail. I hired an operations person and we're going through in every little nitty gritty detail, like insane stuff. And I'm like, we do have a process and it's very detailed and it works very well. But like, I also think it's a lot simpler than we make it out to be. Cause I'm like, I would go to conferences all the time, or I would buy books or whatever. It was like your dream customer, and it'd have all these sheets and all these charts and like all the different, things that you'd fill out and write out. And I'm just like, I do all the work, but like it didn't come to anything, right? Like I'm like, I don't really know. And so I can't speak for everyone. I specifically help and work with people that have a skill that they've already sold once, right? Or more, right? Like I'm not in the business of helping a complete beginner come and figure out that market, right? But for the person that's gone and, has a skill that they've sold before and gotten a result, like I just write down what my known market is. And I go, okay, if these are the people I know, I understand, like I know who this market is. I've served them. I understand their, their needs or whatever. Then I go and I learned this from Dan Henry. I paid Dan Henry. Do you know who Dan Henry is?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
like
so Dan Henry's
10-second overview. Who's Dan Henry?
Yeah, big time marketer guy. I paid him $100,000 to spend 2 days at his house. And so I flew down to Costa Rica and he asked me, hey, Josh, like, what do you sell? And like, when I say I flew down to his house in Costa Rica, I mean, like we flew down there and then we took a private helicopter to his private pad on the top of a mountain to his house on a mansion overlooking like just insane wealth. Right. And things hit a little differently when you're in that environment. Right. And he goes, Josh, what do you sell? And I'm like, well, I do podcasts or blah, blah. He goes, no. Try again. And I'm like, okay. I help people like build their personal brand and influence. It's like, oh gosh, Josh. He goes, okay, I've sold like 30 or $40 million online. Would you like to know the only 3 things that people buy? And I'm like, yes, Dan, I paid you $100,000. That is literally why I'm here. Right.
That's why
And he
I'm here.
goes, people buy because they want more money, they want better or more sex, or they want to look hot. That's it. And what he was talking about was these three markets, the health, wealth, relationships, right? But what I didn't realize at the time was I thought that when I was trying to find my ideal customer, and when I was trying to find my solution and my product and all these things, that like I had to differentiate myself and it had to be completely different and I'd create my own unique solution and all that. And it's like, no, what we need to understand is what the core need of the market is. And so for me, I'm in the wealth space. I assume you're probably in that space as well. I help people make more money. And like for entrepreneurs, right? Like if you're an entrepreneur and you are in the wealth space, identifying the core need says, okay, well, if I help people make more money, then how do they make money? And like for some people, that's investments. Some people, that's a higher salary. For me, it's like my people make more money by getting more clients. And so it's like at the end of the day, the end, no question, if I help people make more money and my market or my, customers make money by getting clients, then I need to go and I need to find the clientele. I need to find the people in my market that if they need more clients, I am absolutely 100% positive without a question in my mind that I can go and get them more clients by solving a problem that they have. And like, that's where I start. And like, I think it evolves from there, but I don't think you can get any more clear. At least I couldn't get any more clear on who my market was or who my ideal client was until I went and worked with them. And so that's how I pick mine. I go, what are the no markets do I have? How do they currently make money? Or, what market am I in? But for me, how do they make money? And then I go, cool. Who is it that I am absolutely certain I can solve a problem that will, if when solved, will get them more clients tied to money? And that's how I pick my ideal client. Like that's the starting point for what we do.
I love it. And I think after you have identified the ideal client, it's as you're serving them, as you're
Yeah.
connecting with them over and over and saying, oh, this was not the most effective. What is your actual challenge? And you get more clarity by actually serving the people.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed as a short-term rental host is I started out, this is what I thought my ideal client was. And then as you have people come and stay in your property, you're like, oh, I need to make these slight adjustments.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a chiropractor going and making those slight adjustments
Yes.
allow you to say, oh, now I know who I really want to serve. Because it
Yeah.
only takes one or two really bad clients to be like, how did I attract that person? Because what I said or what I did attracted that person.
Yeah. And I
So
think I also think it's interesting because like in the market that I'm in, I can be a little bit more picky with my clientele. Whereas
yeah,
maybe in the short-term rental business, it's you might not know who's booking, right? And
right.
so like for me, I look at it and I go, okay, I used to believe that like making money was this magical, mystical thing that was like, if you were lucky, you could figure it out by throwing enough stuff at the wall. I didn't understand how money was exchanged, right? And so I couldn't understand why somebody would want to pay me lots of money for something that I was essentially like making up, if you will. I mean, not actually, but like I was kind of just like trying to figure it out. And it's funny, the guy that I the guy that I paid $100,000 to, I asked him, I was like, hey, dude, so like what went into the process of like figuring out all the details of my offer? Like, how did you figure out what should be included and whatnot and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, I just made it up. Like I was just like, what can I charge $100,000 for? And then I made a post and then you bought it and then I figured it out. And I was like, this is amazing, right? I mean, like some people look at that and be like, how? But like he was committed to the outcome, right? And so like for me, I go, okay, wait, before I figure out all the details and before I try to figure out all the technical things, right? I go, okay, wait a second. What's the problem that I'm committed to solving and the outcome I'm committed to giving? Because once I understood that money flows to whoever creates the most certainty, right? Money follows value, and whoever can create the most certainty around value will win. I'm like, okay, let me just find someone with a problem I'm absolutely certain that they will solve. And it doesn't matter if they're my first customer. I can charge them premium pricing to solve their problem, and they will pay me every time as long as I know that I can solve that problem.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think when you're consistently delivering on your deliverables, right? You say, hey,
Yes.
this is what I'm going to get by you get this by working with me. And you 100% are committed to say, I will make sure that this happens.
Yeah. Okay.
Period.
Yeah.
That's
Committed to
huge.
the outcome, not the deliverables. Yeah. Like you have to
So
do what
yeah,
you
the
say you're going
outcome.
to do.
That's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
when I say deliverables, what I'm thinking of is, hey, here's the system that I said I was going to show you so that you
Yep.
know exactly what that result's going to look like.
Yep.
And, you can't guarantee results, but you can say, I'm committed to make sure you understand everything you need to know to have the very highest chance possible to
Yeah.
do what needs to be done.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that's a huge value that you can create. And I love what you said about certainty. If you aren't certain and you're not able to say, you know what, I'm sharp. I know exactly what I'm doing here in this space. And you allow your customer to see that certainty too. Then if that doesn't happen, they're not ready, able, and willing. They might be one of those three, but they're not all three. And it's only when they hit that magic ready, able, and willing, like that raw
Yep.
client, that they actually make the decision and they
Yeah.
do it.
I would agree
So
with that. Yeah.
let's dive into this really quick. When you are dealing with someone that you're like, you know what, this is not my ideal client, what do you do to fire clients? Because that's something that, I mean, some businesses it's very easy, others it's a little more
Yeah.
challenging. But let's hear what you do if you fire a client that's not ideal.
Yeah. So I I've worked with a lot of bad clients in the past. I've made a lot of mistakes on things, but one of the things that has worked tremendously well for me has been I vet all of my clients up front.
Mm.
So like if you were to ask me right now, like where can I go to like buy your program? Like there is no link online where you can just go buy from me, right? Like every single person that we sell to, like we actually get on the phone with and have a call with first. And I mean, that's part of the reason we're premiumly priced, right? We know we're not the cheapest, and I'm very upfront about that. But it's because like we have to be able to afford, and it makes sense for us to talk to each person up front. And so when I think about the different types of businesses, I believed, I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, right? It's my nearest neighbor, half mile away. I thought the only way to get rich was to start a business. I didn't even know that you could get rich like with a 9 to 5. I didn't know you could make money and anything else was starting a business. And I thought if anyone was willing to give you money, you take that, right? And so that was a problem because when I started doing that, it created chaos and chaos and chaos. And anytime that I tried to fix the problem after somebody had already come into the business, very rarely did it work, right? It caused, particularly in like a group coaching setting or in a client, in a setting where clients interacted with one another. And so when I would look at the system as a whole, I was like, well, this isn't working. So what would work? And I'm like, well, what would work is if we knew that they were a good fit before we let them into the program, right? And I'm like, well, that's not really possible because I can't get to know people. And then I'm like, well, if we just had a sales call with every person, then that would work. And so our sales process looks like we call it a strategy call. And like, I know that term's generic, but I literally mean that every single person that we get on the phone with, like, even if we get on the phone with you and the very first thing out of your mouth is, I'm in, just tell me the price, I'm in. We won't do that, right? Like, I go, cool. Then if you're in, you'll follow the process. I got some questions. And I literally understand where they're at, like in detail, like what their problem is, how they're feeling, how long they've been stuck there, where they're currently at. And then I go, okay, in 6 to 12 months, like, where do you want to be at? What would that feel like? Like, I literally understand those things in detail. And then I take our process, our framework, and I plug it in and I say, here are the steps that we would take you to get there. Like, do you believe in this process? And I sell them on that. I get to know them. I understand how they think. And then if they're a good fit, or I think they're a good fit, I jive with them. Then we talk details of the program. And I would say that has cut out probably 98% of our bad people, right? And then people that aren't a good fit or that we don't think we can help, we just tell them we can't. We don't sell them.
I think you'll save yourself so much headache doing that.
Yeah.
It's a slower sales process in some respects if you think about it, but on the back end, your fulfillment so much better that it's absolutely worth that
And I also think you
painstaking
can sell
process
at
to make
higher
sure you're
price
not.
points
Oh,
when
what
you
was
do it
that?
this. I also think you can sell at higher price points this way.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people are like, I could never sell something at 25 grand, or I could never sell something at 10 grand. And I'm like, it's actually easier to sell something at 10 or 25 grand than it is to sell it at $1,000 or $5,000 because of the clientele that you would be working with, right? But if you're only selling something at 1,000 or $3,000, like logistically, you can't get on the phone with everybody. You don't have time, right? Because like you're gonna have people that aren't a good fit. But if you charge for lots of money for what you do, like I think every single human being on the planet, if you're in business, should have a $10,000 offer in some capacity. Like,
Yeah.
somehow, some way, get creative because I'm like, there's gonna be buyers for it, right? But if you're only selling low ticket, then logistically, I don't think that you can do this at scale.
Right. And if you really get down to high ticket, you can provide the highest level of service.
Yeah.
So that's why they're paying the premium. It's a done with you, not, or even done for you at some respects, but not a one-to-many type of group coaching typically. So
Yeah.
when you're thinking of what really matters as far as sourcing people, sourcing leads, sourcing ideas, what are I would say maybe the top secrets or tips that you would have to say, hey, this is what works for the majority of your clients to make sure you're attracting those ideal customers?
Oh, specifically around getting clients.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, everything that we do goes through our framework of the golden mic, right? And so my answer is going to be skewed because it's like, I would just say use the golden mic method, right? And what I mean by that is if you don't have a process that you're following every single time, then you don't know if something is working or not. You're just guessing. I learned this from Sam Ovens. I was in his mastermind, right? And he's like, everything's a system, everything's data, right? And he's like, yes, there's an art to it, but he's like, if you can't measure it, then you're just guessing. And when I asked him the difference between like, this guy's got he doesn't anymore, but he had a $36,000 mastermind, 100 people in the mastermind with an 8-month wait list to get in. I mean, like what? The guy's made like 50, 60, $70 million before he started his software, right? And I asked him what made him so successful. And he said, the main difference between me and amateurs, right, is that amateurs focus on all the wrong things. They focus on like the details of the offer. They focus on, the price or the button color or the page or whatever. He goes, all I do is I focus on how my ideal client thinks. And if like when he said that, I was like, oh, if you can build a sales process that aligns with how your ideal client makes decisions, that's going to make them feel like buying because it's going to feel like you're speaking to them. And so the thing that has worked for us, the thing that's worked for me is Alex Hormozi, solve the problems of the rich and they will make you one of them. I like selling to people with money. I like helping people when you sell services like that have money, right? And so I built a sales process that aligns with how people with money, people that are successful think. And that, involves having a microphone or having some form of a platform that allows you to get in front of them where they say yes to the platform or they wouldn't just say yes to you. Just like me and Brad, right? Brad was not going to say yes to me. He said yes to the platform. And then second, building trust, connecting on values, right? I went and studied these powerful relationships and what made them up because it didn't make sense to me why Russell Brunson and I were hanging out and like Russell's inviting me out to ClickFunnels and being like, hey, come on, let's stream this live to my whole audience. And I'm like, this is amazing, but why? Like, why is this happening? It's like, well, number one, you've got to connect on values, right? You have to have some form of shared value, right? And then number two, it's like we've all gone to an event or a conference or met someone where like you connected on values and it was awesome. And they're like, we should do something together. And then nothing ever came of it, right? It's like, well, because in order for a relationship to continue, there must be mutual benefit, meaning both parties must win in the relationship and lives must get better. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to use the podcast. I'm going to use the interview to build that trust, connect on values, figure out a problem that they have that I know how to solve. And I'm going to make them an offer so that their life gets better because I'm going to solve their problem. And my life is going to get better because they're going to pay me money. And that's been my lens of how we've done everything is aligning with that process. And so like, can that be done with paid ads? Probably. I don't know how to do that, but like, I don't run paid ads. Can that be done with, I don't know, door to door or, cold outreach? I'm guessing, right? But like my method is using a microphone to go and do that. And so I would say that, the principles or the tips, the secrets or whatever it works is like just understanding how your ideal client thinks and make decisions and then building a sales process that aligns with that.
Yeah. And keeping it simple. This is something that just pinged in my head as you were speaking just barely. If your customer is confused at any point during the process and you don't actually help them get that resolution and know what you're talking about, how you serve them as simply as possible, they're never going to buy. They have to know exactly, oh, you solved my problem. I've been looking for you. I've been wanting this. And that clarity, that's what creates the connection. It looked like you had another idea. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do. Although I do believe that there's one step before that, which is when you're selling particularly high ticket. I believe that. So, I asked Sam, and I've asked this to many questions or, people that are successful. I was like, okay, well, how do people with money buy? And the first thing that they basically always say is they buy from their friends, meaning they buy from people they know, like, and trust. And like, I had a buddy who bought a sports car, right? And like, he literally pulled up and he was showing it to me and it was like, I don't know, it was like $120,000 or $150,000 or whatever, right? And I was like, why'd you buy that one? There's one literally right down the street, the exact same car, same color, same model, for like 20,000 less. He's like, yeah, but I knew the guy, right? Like if anything ever goes wrong, like I know I'm taken care of. And it's like, I think first and foremost is if we shift from this mindset of I've got something to sell into I've got a problem that I can solve, right? I can serve somebody. I think step one is you actually have to build trust. There actually has to be that piece of I trust you. There's that shared value, and then it's the clarity of okay, you're going to help me go from here to here. Because like lots of people can offer go to here to here, and that is crucial. It is very important, but it's not the most important part. Because I've bought things before and I've sold to people where I'll get on the phone with them and like their first question is, so what exactly are we doing? Or like, what did I just buy? And it's like they're buying just because they buying because they like me. They're buying because they trust me, not because I have some offer. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's based on the relationship.
Yeah.
I've heard this over and over in business. It's relationship to riches, relationship to wealth.
Mm.
And if you don't have that connection or guanxi in Mandarin, that's one of my favorite words is guanxi. You scratch my back, I scratch yours because you know, like, and trust them. It's something that as you build that relationship, the relationship will take you places that you couldn't if you did it by yourself. And
Absolutely.
a lot of times you're only one relationship away from absolutely changing the rest of your life. So let's talk about one of those relationships in your life. Who is a pillar in your life that helped you become the very best version of yourself, the version that you are currently? Who helped you? Helped you? It could be a mentor, could be a teacher, could be a friend, could be another person that you're like,
Yeah.
man, was the guy. Go ahead.
I mean, I think there's there's the better answers to the question. Then I mean, there's two. One of them is my coach Katie, but like that was much more internal, right? Like that was like identity and self and overcoming, internal things. And that was that relationship. I talk about it a lot, but it wasn't like people don't really know who she is. But I think the one that everyone knows, and I think the one that a lot of people see and are like, how did you do that? Was Russell Brunson for sure. I mean, I went from a nobody farm kid with I mean, like no, like I said, no talents, connection, skills, billionaires or whatever. And like Russell Brunson and I are close friends now. And I mean, that one relationship completely changed the course of my life. And I mean, opened up opportunities that money literally could not buy for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want that for all of my listeners. I want that for every single person because when you have a relationship that is like a linchpin, if we're using Russell's term, but a
Yep.
linchpin in your life, it's almost like a floodgate gets opened up, and these opportunities come. And when you're ready, you can take those opportunities and you can ride that wave. But if you're
Yep.
not ready, that just washes over you, get wiped out. So, in your experience in business, and you've been doing this for a while now, what has been a piece of encouragement? It could be a mantra or a saying that has made all the difference for you.
Oh goodness. Um, Encouragement.
Yeah.
Um, probably probably that money flows to whoever creates the most certainty and money follows value.
Mm,
Because like I think like I get in my own head a lot, right? I mean, I grew up pretty insecure and oftentimes like I've been very blessed financially and very blessed in business, thanks to the mentors and coaches that I've hired. But like we all have down days. We all have days when we're like, this is never gonna work. No one's ever gonna buy from me. I don't have anything of value and whatever, blah, 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 blah. And it's like when you just understand that money's not mythical. It's not this magical thing that's like there's just principles of it, right? And it's like if
yeah.
you create value and it can communicate it with certainty, like people will buy, period. And so I think like on my down days or days when I'm feeling overwhelmed or like I don't have any money or like I need money to go and build a business it's just like, oh, well, if I just know that money will flow to whoever creates the most certainty and money follows value, then I just need to create something of value and communicate it with certainty and then people will buy. Doesn't matter who I am, how old I am, what gender I am, what race I am, what experience level I have. Like it doesn't, none of that matters. It's just, can you create value and communicate it with certainty? And if the answer is yes, you will make money. And I think that's been a very reassuring piece because then I don't have to rely on me. I just have to rely on principles.
Excellent. I
Yeah.
think relying on principles when it's actually principle centered, it's truth based,
Yeah.
right? Then it's going to be true today. It's going to be true yesterday. It's going to be true in the future. And
Yeah.
that's
Those
where you're
principles
creating
never change.
evergreen
Yeah.
content, evergreen relationships as well, because it has a strong foundation. So,
Yep.
well, here's a question I love to ask. What is a question that I haven't asked that you wish that I had?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think an important question that people should ask is how do they know, how do I word this? How do they know who they should follow? Like, how do they know, how does anyone know they should listen to me at all? right? Or anyone
Sure.
for that matter. I think that that's an important question.
Yeah. And how would you respond to that?
Um, so it used to be that back in the day that the barrier to, between the rich and the poor, the successful and the non-successful or whatever, it was access to information, right?
Mhm.
It was like, if you, the reason most people stayed broke was because they literally could not afford to get access to the information, like whether it was school or college or, around or whatever, right? And so
Yeah,
there was not enough information. And then the internet came along, and YouTube University is the greatest ever, right? It's
for
amazing. And
sure.
now it's like, if you have access to the internet, heck, if you're alive, basically, you can get access to the internet. You have access to essentially unlimited information. And so the problem now has flipped. The problem is now I have too much information and there's paralysis, and I have no idea who I should follow because everybody's telling me something different, even though they're actually not, but it seems that way.
Mm.
And so, um, how many podcasts are there? I mean, so many. How many different interviews and people telling you, oh, this is the way to success, or here's the secret, or here's what I learned, or whatever. And it's like, are they all right? Maybe, but like, that's not going to help you. That's not going to help the listener. And so there's a lot of your listeners that probably shouldn't listen to me, right? They probably shouldn't listen to my advice because I'm not their person. And so my advice, or the way that I would answer that question, is I would go, I look at coaches, I look at people, I look at the information that I'm consuming, and I look at everything as a system. And I go, there's inputs into a system, my brain, and then there are outputs, right? So there's information coming in, and then there's an output because of that. And for me, I only want to take in inputs from people that have what I want and value the things that I value, right? Like, one of the reasons that I'm really good friends with Russell Brunson, and I don't share values with him on everything, but we share a lot of the same values, like faith and family and how to treat people and like these things, right? And like, he
Mhm.
prioritizes those things. So I'm like, okay, that man has the values that I have. And then I go, cool, does he have the life that I want to live? And in the areas of marketing and business, I'm like, okay, cool. He knows things that I want to go and learn. And so I think that if somebody is trying to determine their path, if someone is trying to determine whether they should actually sit down and listen to this interview 10 times, or they should stop the interview now and never listen to me again, is simply asking the question of, does this person, Josh, does the person I'm listening to, do they have the things that I want to have, or and value the things that I want to value? I am a follower of Jesus Christ. I have recommitted my life to him in every way, possible. I am loyal, incredibly loyal to my wife, right? And we just had our first kid, who's 5 months old now, and she's adorable. And I
Congratulations.
value
That's
those
awesome.
things, and I value freedom. And everything in business and life that I do comes back to freedom. I'm not going to teach people how to build $100 million company, or have 500 employees. I can show you how to make a couple $1,000,000 and be free for the rest of your life financially, right? I can show you how to build a business that's going to allow you to have a healthy marriage and be a present father and be involved in the church, because I do those things on a daily basis. And so I think that if people are trying to figure that thing out, I think that people should look at and go, okay, who am I actually receiving information from? And if they do not align on your values, meaning they are okay with lying and you're not, or they're an atheist and you're religious, or vice versa, whatever, then that's the first filter. Maybe just don't listen to them then, right? And then number two is, do they have the value, or do they have the skills or the life that I want to live? Part of the reason I hired Dan Henry for $100,000 is I looked at his life, and I looked at how he was able to make money, and I looked at the skills that he had, and I went, I want to learn that, right? And guess what? He's Muslim and I'm Christian. So we don't have the same religious values, but guess what? He values, telling the truth and treating people with respect and actually delivering what he says he's going to in business. And I'm like, in the area of business, that's enough values for me to go, you have the skill, we align on these values, I will pay you, and I'm going to go learn from you. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I made a mistake of early on, was not doing that.
I love that. And I learned very similarly that same principle, that same lesson from my theater background. I was taught for a long time, hey, this is a good play or a bad play by all my friends in high school. But the reality is, every single play you go to has moments that are brilliant and moments that are just okay.
Right.
And when you can start to compartmentalize your business, your life, and say, who is it that I want to model, that I want to mimic, because they are living the lifestyle that I want, or they have the community connections that I want, or they have this system down pat, and I want to, emulate that same system, or I want to figure out, hey, this person is able to generate the income that I want. You find each part of that mentorship cycle and say, all right, this is the person that is right for my religious worship. This is the person that is living the life that I want. And like, I'm also a follower of Jesus Christ. I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. I'm going to follow the prophet. I'm going to find people that are living the lifestyle just the way that I want to. And then you emulate, you model, you mimic. You don't have to copy perfectly
Right.
because none of us are perfect.
Right. You're
But
right.
as we do our very best to actually see the patterns,
Yeah.
then we can start to apply those
I think
patterns
that's
in
spot
life.
on. Absolutely. Yeah. You don't have
For
to
sure.
follow them perfectly. You're absolutely right. And you take your own spin on it, but you look at how they live and you look at what they're doing and you go, okay, cool. If I can model those things, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
For sure. Well, in the last moment that we have today, would you mind kind of summarizing what is your golden mic method, like the 30,000 foot overview? Guys, there's no way you're going to get this whole method in, 45-minute podcast, but give us a 30,000 foot overview. What is your method if you could say, hey, this is the
Yep.
basics?
Yep. So I like to start with the problem. I'm going to go back to, the very beginning, which is, go back to the Brad example with me with the podcast, which was most entrepreneurs cannot get in front of their ideal client consistently. Right.
Mhm.
And like, if I were to say the word ideal, like your ideal client has money, right? Because if they didn't, then they wouldn't be ideal. Right. And so
Right.
it's like, okay, the golden mic method says, how do we build a system that aligns with how our ideal client thinks, right? In a way that we can do consistently. And when I studied tactics and strategies and hacks and all the things that everyone else promised me was going to make me rich, like it just didn't work, right? Like, or they did, and then crash. There weren't things that I could rely on, right? And, in the Bible, it says, hey, the wise man built his house upon the rock and the foolish man built his house upon the sand. And I had been building my house, my business, right, on the sand. And so I went and I started studying principles. And I said, okay, if I know that my problem is, and that the problem that entrepreneurs have is, how do we get in front of our ideal client consistently? We're not able to do that. What are the principles that allow me to go and do that in a way that like everybody wins, right? I'm a big believer in creating, mutual benefit and value. Step number one is we have to have a way to get in front of them. And the principle behind this is I can't ask someone to say yes to me because everybody would do that. I have to get them to say yes to an idea. I have to have some platform. I have to have something that they want to come and talk to me about, that they want to come and talk to me about. Not that they're willing to, not that, that they might, they actually have to want to come and do it. Right. And so that's like step one. The reason Russell Brunson reached out to come on my podcast, and we've been on multiple times for 3.5 hours long and all that, is because he wanted to talk about Atlas Shrugged, and my podcast was a place in his community that he could do it. Right. It's like, okay, how do I have a platform? We use a microphone, right? How do I have a platform? It could be a podcast, a YouTube channel, whatever, right? Where my ideal client wants to come talk to me, because now I can get in front of them. Step two is, okay, now what do we know about wealthy people? What do we know about ideal clients? Is that they buy from people that they know, like, and trust. They buy to solve problems, right? They're not going to say yes for, potential something. They're buying to remove a problem. And so in the interview now, my goal is not to go talk about me. It's not to talk about my skill set or anything like that. It's to build trust, build a relationship, connect on values, and get them to a point where at the end of it, there is trust, right? Where they're like, they see we're one in the same. We connect on value. Like, I like you. I trust you. I see you as me. Like, let's do something together. And then in the post-interview conversation, I, have a conversation with them where I ask them some questions to try to figure out if they have a problem that I know how to solve, right? I'm looking for, the principle here is mutual benefit, right? And so the second piece is, okay, how do I build trust and find mutual benefit, right? That's the next principle that I'm looking for in that. And so step one is to have a platform. Step two is to build a relationship on trust and values and be looking for ways that you can make their life better. And then part three is, listen, the relationship can't continue unless there's actually the exchange of value, right? Like, money isn't happening unless there's an actual sale. And so we use what's called the 6-figure close process. It's a Google Doc and a call where you then take the information and what you learned about them, you put it in a Google Doc, and you frame or present it in a way where you show them that, hey, if you have this problem, here's my idea. Here's where I think I can solve it to where both of us win in this deal, right? And if you see things the way that I do and you agree with this, let's have a call and discuss details. And the principle there is framing it in such a way to where they see it and want to buy it, because they understand that you've done the research to get to know them, to build trust, and that you're actually solving a real problem for them, not just making something up on the spot. And there is, we have principles and then strategy and then tactic and then skills for all of these things. And diving down the nitty gritty. But the principle there is, how do I first get in front of someone? How do I go then build trust with them? And then how do I provide and then present mutual benefit in a way that makes them want to buy? And if you do that, like, you can make literally millions of dollars with just this one skill, quite frankly.
Yeah. And you're going to be solving problems that they care about. You've already built a know, like, and trust factor by having them on your show, or at least connecting with you.
Yeah.
Maybe they start to hear you on YouTube, or they hear your show first and then they reach out. So uh in the very last moments of this podcast, what is one call to action? What is one thing you're like, hey guys, if you heard nothing else, do this one thing and you will have a better result in your life and your business? What is one call to action that you'd say, do this?
I mean, if you're an entrepreneur that has a skill and you sell services online, I would say go learn the golden mic method, right? But I think more accurately than that, I would say go study principles, right? Like if you can't apply principles, that's what a strategy and tactics are for, right? You apply principles via a strategy and tactic, but unless you know what the principles are, you're not going to make any money. You're not going to have success. And so the golden mic method is a principle-based approach to sales for, people that sell services and stuff online, sell their skills there. But more important than anything is to like go actually study principles and go actually learn the things that are never going to change, and learn them from people that you want to become like, or have the life and skills that you want to live, or that you want to have.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Josh. Man, it was so much fun to chat with you. This was an excellent exchange of value, having a great time. And I hope that this was something that allowed you to have a great platform, like you said, to share your ideas. So I really appreciate you, man.
Absolutely.
Awesome. We'll end the live stream right now, but man, thank you so much, guys. If you love this type of content, you want to see how you can level up your life consistently, hit that like and subscribe button. And Josh, where can people find you online?
Social media, Instagram and Facebook at Josh Forti, or the YouTube at Josh Forti is always a great place. I'm very, very active on there. If you want to listen to the podcast, you can go to my website, just Josh Forti, JoshForti.com, has the details on there. But if you actually want to find me and like connect with me or whatever, social media is a great place. But like, you don't need me. Like, if you need me, if you're a service provider that need it, take this information and go apply it. And if I can be of value along the way, by all means, check us out. But yeah, just go do the work.
Excellent. Well, God bless everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.